None of us can be complacent. None of us can be cocky. But the momentum right now where it matters, which is swing state polling as well as financially, the momentum is clearly in President Trump's favor. I think corporate media recognizes that. You add in this Charlottesville debunking, and we have the recipe, I think, for a fascinating summer into the debate, into the conventions, and hopefully, of course, into Election Day when we start saving this country again.
All right, guys, a lot to get into. It is debate week. If you're a political junkie, this is a big deal. This is like, I mean, first of all, now that they're already before the convention, oh my gosh, this is like big deal. It's like an added Christmas. Oh my gosh, we're going to have such a great week here on the show. Make sure you're subscribing. Hit that notification button right now. I want to talk to you about the campaign, the debate, and something that went on Bill Maher. Before I do that, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors. As you know, Delta Rescue. My friend Leo Grillo does amazing work rescuing all sorts of animals, dogs, cats, horses. If you watched before, you know that Leo schooled me early on in our relationship. I said something about a shelter. He said, no, Sean, it's not a shelter. What Delta Rescue is a no-kill sanctuary for life. And I'll just be straight up. I didn't really even know the difference because I've rescued a couple dogs, 3 dogs to be honest with you. And Leo said what we do at Delta Rescue, and if you go to deltarescue.org, you can see the videos. It's a no-kill sanctuary for life. They give them the nutritional and the veterinarian care that they need for life. They can roam freely. Go to Delta Rescue, check out the videos, and you know what I'm talking about. But this isn't like a time thing where they're trying to get them a home. This is a sanctuary, and it's so cool what he's done. But it relies entirely on our contribution. So if you can give $50, $100, $1,000, whatever it is, and you go to deltarescue.org, you'll check out a place to donate. What I would love to help Leo do is make Delta Rescue an enduring mission so that for decades and generations to come, the work that Leo started continues. So if you can go to deltarescue.org and check out the estate planning kit, we can help make our legacy part of Leo's mission, and that Delta Rescue will endure forever. So please go to deltarescue.org and see what you can do to help the amazing work that Leo is doing at Delta Rescue. All right, guys, a couple quick things off the top because we're going to talk debate a lot with my friend Steve Cortes. I want to tell you quickly about something that happened on the Bill Maher show, which is interesting because Andrew Cuomo is on there. And when we get to that, I want to thank the Biden campaign. Check this out, though, first. Let me show you Andrew Cuomo on Bill Maher this week. You blow your mind. Take a look.
The trial in New York, the one he got convicted for, was the greatest fundraising bonanza ever. He was lagging behind Biden, and now he's pulled quite a bit ahead. That trial was the greatest reason people had to send their checks for $5, $10, $25, whatever dollars to Donald Trump. So I was always with you on the one in New York, the hush money trial. I don't think they should have brought that one. It was just always going to look like a sex case, and people were always just going to look at it that way. So anyway.
That case, the Attorney General's case in New York, frankly, should have never been brought. And if his name was not Donald Trump, and if he wasn't running for president, I'm the former AG in New York, I'm telling you that case would have never been brought. And that's what is offensive to people. And it should be, because if there's anything left, it's belief in the justice system.
Think about that. Cuomo is not just the governor. Remember, before he was governor, he was the Attorney General of New York, saying, I would have never brought that case. Think about that. Democrat Andrew Cuomo, no friend of Donald Trump's, former Attorney General of New York, saying, I wouldn't have brought that case. Forget the political piece, which is what Maher was talking about. There's the former Democratic Attorney General. All right, before we get to this interview, this conversation with Steve Cortes, my former campaign buddy and colleague at Newsmax, I want to say thank you. Just let's get it out there. Thank you to the Biden campaign. They're a regular watcher of the show. They send out so many clips of my interview with President Trump Friday. If you want to see the full interview, you can go right back on YouTube and check it out. But thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. And bipartisanship, it's alive, man. Thank you to the Biden campaign for watching the Sean Spicer show. And thank you for promoting my documentary, Trump's Front Row Joes. It's out now. You can go to salemnow.com to watch it. You can give it if you want as a gift to somebody. But this is, if you missed the rally this weekend that he had in Pennsylvania, you've never been to one, you want to see what it's like at a Trump rally, or you want to see what it's like to be one of these ardent supporters that go to Salem Now and watch Trump's Front Row Joes. I was so excited to make this over the last 2 years, and I want to share it with you. I appreciate all the people who downloaded it over the weekend. Go to salemnow.com, watch Trump's FrontRowJoes.com. Excuse me, it's .movie, but Trump's Front Row Joes, and check it out. You're going to love it. I'm so excited to have made this film and how much support you've given me. I want to bring in my buddy Steve Cortes. He was on the Trump 2020 campaign, and a key part of that. He now runs the League of American Workers, does some great work out there analytically and polling-wise. Without further ado, Steve Cortes. Well, Steve, I hope you had a great weekend, and I assume you don't even know what I'm going to lead in with, but I'm going to tell you right now, big kudos, because I get this 7-year-old fact check alert coming out of Snopes, and on Breitbart, they single you out for credit. Now, for the audience, let me just tell you what I'm talking about. You guys have all remember the Charlottesville thing. We're talking August 2017. 7 years ago. And last night, they put out a fact check saying, I know it's been a little while, but guess what? President Trump didn't call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. Steve, let me just lead in with the Snopes, and then I want to talk to you about your role in this.
Sure.
It says, this is Snopes.com, right? We looked into these claims and found that while Trump did say that there were very fine people on both sides, meaning both the protesters and the counter-protesters, the counter-protesters, they just were there because they wanted the monument to stay. They liked Robert E. Lee or whatever. It says, he also condemned neo-Nazis and white nationalists outright and said that he was specifically referring to those who were there only to participate in the statue protest. We found the original clip on C-SPAN and transcribed the relevant section below. This is Snopes.com. Like, somehow they were like, we got a fortnight in a wagon and we rolled up to them C-SPAN headquarters and finally got, what? I don't understand what took so long.
Yeah. Listen, I'll take it, right? Even 7 years late, this correction of the record. And, but very much kidding aside, on a very serious note, this lie, this very damnable hoax, this myth that the media has been propagating for years and years, it did tremendous damage to this country. I think it did great damage to race relations, particularly in this country, because it wasn't just about Donald Trump. The media fooled at least half the country into believing that not just Trump, but that our entire movement was based in racism, that it was a movement of bigotry instead of one of patriotic populism. And because of that, this lie had real pernicious, malicious effect on our entire society and certainly on our politics. So, obviously it's natural for us to sort of laugh like, oh gosh, you just figured this out, Snopes. And by the way, Snopes claims to be a fact-checking site. It's incredibly left-leaning. I would put fact-checking in quotes for Snopes. I'll give them some credit, I guess. I'll give them a D- rather than an F. Because they have finally come around to the truth. I'm not sure why, and there's a lot of because I've been so involved in this hoax for so long, I've been fighting it for years and years. Lots of people, Sean, you're probably not surprised to hear this, reached out to me over the weekend. My phone was blowing up with people saying, oh my gosh, Snopes admits you've been right all along. And then everybody naturally, the next question is, well, why? And why now?
That's okay. Why? So give me your theory. Why?
I don't know, to be quite honest. And here's what most people say, and I don't buy into this, okay? I believe Joe Biden is the nominee. I believe he will be the nominee until November 5th. But what most folks are saying, who are incredibly skeptical of the entire process, is that this is a step toward removing Joe Biden. Why? Why is this that important? Well, remember, Joe Biden based his entire campaign, the reason he is president, is predicated upon the Charlottesville lie. That's not my opinion. That is his own explicit words. I take him at his words when he's explicit, unlike the media with Donald Trump at Charlottesville. So it is foundational. Now, this might be very interesting. Will CNN bring this up on Thursday night? If they do, then that's going to be a problem for Joe Biden, because he has continued to spread this lie, this malicious lie, again and again, not just as a foundation for him running, but throughout his tenure in the White House. But here's my honest answer, Sean. I don't know why they decided to do it now. I really don't, because I don't believe that. I believe Joe Biden is the nominee. We'll see what happens. But, I do know this. It's important for our nation. The more people who can recognize this, even though Snopes, again, is a very imperfect, quote, fact checker.
Yeah.
I think this is still going to be important for us to use as a device to convince people out there who believe that Donald Trump is a racist, that you have been fed a lie. And I've been fighting this for so many years. And the main reason, too, just to quickly explain my own involvement, is that when I was at CNN in 2018 and 2019 at the request of President Trump, believe it or not, some of the folks out there may not know, I worked for CNN, went to combat every night, verbal combat in the political arena, fighting for the America First agenda in the most unfriendly octagon possible. And again, they would bring up the Charlottesville lie. And I would always verbally say, no, that's wrong. He didn't say that. And they would just, quickly dismiss me, move on, sometimes even cut my mic. So finally, I said, okay, I need to write an article, a serious article, which I did at Real Clear Politics. This is back in 2019, the spring of 2019. I wrote an article at Real Clear Politics detailing with the transcript, okay, here's what he exactly said, here's what he did not say. Dennis Prager then picked up that article, had me on his show, then had me make a PragerU video, which thankfully went really, really viral. Last I checked, it had almost 9 million views. Donald Trump, while he was president, tweeted out that video. So we did some damage to the lie, but we hardly killed it, clearly, because Joe Biden launched his campaign on it. Now, my hope is that this Snopes thing, and again, I don't want to give too much credit to Snopes, but Snopes matters to the left-wing media. And this is going to defang their ability to spread this lie from here. So I do think it's consequential. And my hope is that we kill this lie, not just for political reasons, which of course I'm very interested in terms of helping Donald Trump into this November, but more importantly than that, Sean, helping our society to heal. Because again, most people, if they believe Donald Trump is racist, or if they think that our movement is based in bigotry, if you ask them why, they almost immediately point to Charlottesville. He called neo-Nazis very fine people. If they are now willing to actually look at the transcript, and by the way, let me give you exact quote from the transcript. Quote, this is from Donald Trump. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
No equivocation there, okay? No equivocation. If we can show people his actual words, my view is not only will it be good for Donald Trump, it will be good for our society and for some racial healing and racial reckoning, because the left has ginned it up for their own political purposes, and they did so largely through the device of the Charlottesville hoax.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt this conversation with Steve, but I'm going to tell you something right now. The IRS may be coming for some of us. They have spent billions of dollars hiring tens of thousands to the tune of like 50,000 new IRS agents, and they've got nothing else to do but to come after us. So if you owe money, maybe it's personal, maybe it's business, it could be $10,000, $10 million, you do not want to talk to anyone from the IRS until you talk to my friends at Tax Network USA. You can give them a call, 1-800-245-6000, or go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. So whether you owe $10,000, $10 million, it doesn't matter. Personal, business. The folks at Tax Network have gotten back over $1 billion for their clients. The people at Tax Network know what they're doing. You do not want to talk to anyone from the IRS without representation. And trust me, the folks at Tax Network USA know exactly what they're doing. Go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer before you talk to anybody from the IRS. If you get a phone call, a knock at the door, or a letter in your mail, call Tax Network before you talk to the IRS. First of all, you just you answered every question I had, or brought up, because I was going to go there about Biden said this was the predicate for why he ran. They just took it away. I think that's important. I think that there's two things that I think are really interesting that I want you to pull the thread on. Number one, this whole thing stemmed from a very wide-ranging press conference. It was on video. Right. I am amazed that with the video there, that the lie was perpetrated the way it was. We talk about misinformation all the time. The quote that you just read was for everybody to see, and yet what you said was exactly right. They intentionally edited this. By the way, on a week in which they are all claiming cheap fakes and edited videos, this is amazing to me, because for the longest time, and again, I will give you 100% credit, like you were the loudest voice in the room on this saying BS, BS, BS. But I was like, guys, like read what he said. And everyone wanted to put anyone who supported Donald Trump on this, like, how dare you defend him, right? But this gets back to, I want to focus in, will they bring it up? CNN perpetrated this. They have been the ones to do this. Do you really think that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, and we're going to talk about the debate in a minute, but I just can't imagine the people who were part of perpetrating it will now say, I agree. I think that this is, to me, the question is this. President Biden, you said that you ran because of Charlottesville, because of comments that President Trump supposedly made about Charlottesville. Those have been proven factually incorrect by an independent fact checker. Does that change your motivation for running?
Right. Exactly. That would be the honest question. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not. I certainly will not hold my breath that Dana Bash or Jake Tapper is going to be an honest arbiter, is going to try to play referee rather than partisan that night. But here's my point, though, too, Sean, is that it's at least a possibility, right, given what Snopes just did. It's at least in the realm of possibility. And again, too, I think it at least pulls the venom out of this attack. And this attack has persisted, again, for 7 years. And it has unfortunately been very effective. And by the way, too, I certainly don't want to claim sole credit. Absolutely not. There were many voices fighting against this, but I have been sort of like a dog with a bone on this issue because it was so important to me. And because I saw, I think maybe clearer or earlier than most, I saw what it was doing outside of politics. I saw what it was doing to race relations in this country, which had been getting better for decades and then started to get massively worse. And I think in large part because the corporate media believed that it had to gin up fake racism and fake bigotry and assign it to Trump and to the America First movement so that it could defeat it politically. It's an awful act of cynicism and dishonesty. But again, now we have, thankfully, a weapon that they recognize, that the left wing recognizes as objective. I don't, okay, but they do. This Snopes supposed fact checker finally coming to reality. And again, why? That is the $64,000 question. If anybody has a great answer for me, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear why they came to this conclusion now. Again, I know a lot of people are saying it's because it's a step in removing Biden. I don't believe that, but it's not an implausible argument either. I do have to admit that.
So here's what I'll say. I have long maintained that the left is all about branding. They find Donald Trump a threat. And the latest example is convicted felon, right? They will use this now over and over again, even though we know this is a BS thing because it was trumped up on a bookkeeping misdemeanor charge past the statute of limitations. They didn't want to just get him on that. It had to be a felony. Everyone keeps asking, why did Bragg make it a felony? It's because he had to. He had to get the label in there. Donald Trump's a convicted felon. How dare you vote for a convicted felon, right? I think this is the same thing. They wanted to be able to brand him a racist, and therefore this was the vehicle. Steve, here's the thing, though. You keep trying to find the why, and I'm with you on this. Something's going on here. I just don't know when we'll find out. But they didn't do this because like I said, I'm half joking. Like somehow they took a wagon and made it to D.C. and accessed the CNN, the C-SPAN files as if like somehow that's the only way. I mean, there are videos. Just search Charlottesville. You can see the whole thing. Something happened. And I'm with you. I don't know what it is. But the folks at Snopes didn't do this 7 years later out of the goodness of their heart. Something is going on. And I think we should put a pin in this, save the tape for now. I don't know what's going to happen. But
Sean, they didn't find their consciences suddenly. And by the way, because the audience may find this interesting, and I'm not trying to over personalize it, but because it speaks to CNN, it speaks to the corporate media. Once I made this PragerU video and it went viral, okay, I was under employment at CNN, okay, and appearing every single night in prime time, arguing with Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo and the gang, okay, every single night. Once this video went crazy, I was completely taken off the air. Now, they didn't fire me. They continued to pay me, and some people might say, oh, well, hey, isn't that great to get paid to not work? Well, not really when you want to be in the arena, number one. But number two, I said, listen, let me out. If you're not going to use me, coach, cut me, okay? Let me go play for another team because this is what I do, okay? I communicate. I write articles. I go on television. This is what I do for a living. So, yes, you are paying me, but you are also punishing me. They refused to let me out. They were willing to think about that and think about what they did to their shareholders, by the way. They were willing to pay somebody to not do his job and to not communicate with the public. Why? Because I had exposed the truth, and that's how scared they were of the Charlottesville truth back then, and that's how committed they were to the Charlottesville lie and to continuing to spread that hoax. So just think about that. You got to be dang committed to a hoax to be willing to pay someone to not come on air so that they can't then talk about the reality of the hoax. I mean, that's something.
I think the audience needs to fully appreciate what you're saying, because it's not the first time that that's happened, where these networks, MSNBC, CNN in particular, will put people like you, right-leaning folks, on the network and then shut them. They don't want your voice out there. And this is something that people have to understand. You're right. It's counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. It's anti-business, anti-capitalist. But it happens more than we think, only to the right. And it's just something that I think is fascinating to keep an eye on. I will say this, and this was the key to what you said. You can't unring the bell. Once they branded him a racist, they couldn't tell anyone. But something, I'm telling you, something's going on, and we will find out in a few months what really happened. Because to your point, no one walked into Snopes. Do you remember? Do you ever watch TMZ with Harvey Levin, the TV show where they all sit around and pitch stories? I always, every once in a while, if it's on, in the afternoon, I'll just, my celebrity gossip quota isn't filled. I'll watch it, right? And it's like they're pitching them. They're like, here's Paris Hilton walk into a bar, check it out, blah, 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 whatever. I have this vision of like somebody walking into Snopes headquarters and being like, hey, guess what I did? I watched the video about Trump from 7 years ago. It turns out it's a complete lie. We should, that just doesn't happen in real time. And anyway, I'll move on, but I will just say the reason that it was amazing to me was, number one, this happened, but then the Breitbart article really calls out your hard work to make sure that people understood that it didn't just happen. I think something's causing them. And maybe it's your PragerU video. Maybe it's something that somebody there was like, guys, we need to address this because whatever, something's going on or will come on. But speaking of sort of the misinformation thing, it's interesting. The narrative for a while was Biden's raising all this money. Trump's never going to catch up. They're screwed. Then Trump goes on this fundraising blitz, $150 million in one night or in 1 month, whatever it was in that one night at Palm Beach. Now the story coming out in Politico today is Trump is on a fundraising blitz, but there are other warning signs for Republicans. Because here we go. Let's shift it. Okay, the money's not there as a story anymore. And it says Trump may be raking in donations. But across the country, the mood of Republicans has dimmed, according to nearly a dozen Republican operatives. My God, the shift in the nation must be huge because they talk to a dozen people, which a couple of them, by the way, in the story are never Trumpers, county chairs and current and former GOP officials. 12 people are apparently shifting the entire mood of the country, but that's okay. And it follows defections from Trump in the primaries, and most recently, polling has found that Trump's convictions in his New York hush money trial hurting him with independence. Do you think that that's really what's going on here? Are people souring for some reason because he's finally crushing Biden now financially?
Listen, I believe that it's a sign for sure that the corporate media and that the Democratic Party, and they are conjoined, of course, as one in their interests, that they are getting increasingly worried. Yes, that not just is Trump leading in the polls, which is what matters most, of course, but that he's also starting to really gain financially, and that he's started to gain over some previously skeptical donors who were on the sidelines. They weren't pro-Biden, but they were on the sidelines, and they are now believing, hey, Trump can win, Trump should win. And they're starting to back the America First agenda. So the left is increasingly worried. And one thing they've always believed that they could count on is a financial advantage, right? And listen, when it comes down to it, by the time we get to Election Day, I still believe they will have a financial advantage. But the point is, it won't be nearly as big as they had planned on or as they had hoped for. And by the way, why do they get a financial advantage? Well, because they do the bidding of big business. That's the reason why. Because they're the best friends that big tech and big pharma, for example, could ever have. But the point is right now, whatever financial edge they think they had, that is shrinking very, very quickly. And in fact, in the near term, Donald Trump has the financial edge for now. So let's hope that momentum continues. And we know in the end, it's the votes that matter most, but money matters too, of course. And money helps generate votes. So all this matters. Listen, I think that the momentum, none of us can be complacent. None of us can be cocky. But the momentum right now where it matters, which is swing state polling, as well as financially. The momentum is clearly in President Trump's favor. I think corporate media recognizes that. You add in this Charlottesville debunking as a very interesting side note there. And, we have the recipe, I think, for a fascinating summer into the debate, into the conventions, and hopefully, of course, into Election Day when we start saving this country again.
Yeah, I just don't. Money's not going to be a problem on either side. But I think this goes back to what we were talking about narrative-wise. They are trying to figure out a new way, a constant way of depressing the vote on the right. Oh, you guys are upset. You're not satisfied. You've got concerns with Trump. He's a convicted felon. Abortion is driving. I mean, it's constantly trying to depress the folks on the right that there's something wrong. And it's lifting, and it's always giving optimism to Team Biden. That being said, let's kind of dive into the big issue of the week. It is debate week. We are 3 days out. What do your let's just start this. What do you expect of this debate? Does it matter?
Oh, I think it very much matters. I really do. Look, the fight for persuadable voters in the swing states, and they are the holy grail of politics in 2024. The fight for them, I believe, really commences on Thursday night, because most of those folks, if they're undecided, are probably not intensely political people. But I believe we're going to get a massive ratings audience. So tens of millions of Americans will tune in. And in terms of winning those voters over, it will at least start on Thursday night. And honestly, Sean, if something demonstrative happens in either direction, I think it could very well end Thursday night. I really do, for those voters. So I think it's incredibly consequential. Look, I think the burden of proof is upon Joe Biden. And why do I say that? Not just because of my own partisan leanings, but because of what the polling is telling us, which is that the country is in an incredibly sour mood. In survey after survey, 3/4 of Americans think that America is headed in the wrong direction. Almost that many Americans disapprove of Joe Biden on the economy. So the onus is on him. The burden of proof is on him to try to convince people that he deserves 4 more years. And then in addition to that, key central foundational policy issue, of course, he also has to convince the American people that he is cognitively able to handle 4 more years in office. And so he has to perform on live television for 90 minutes against one of the most skilled debaters in all of political history, Donald Trump. And so that, too, puts all of the pressure on him. So, and listen, I do think it's smart of Team Trump, both the president himself as well as his team lately have dialed down expectations, saying, listen, Joe Biden's been in politics for 50 years. He knows how to debate. I think that's smart to do. Of course, it's sort of the Lou Holtz playbook from football. Act like your opponent is, unbeatable. But at the same time, for those of us who are analyzing the situation and trying to be objective about it, the burden of proof is clearly on Biden. I think there will be some fireworks, to be sure. The issue set rests strongly with Donald Trump, particularly on the 2 I's of inflation and immigration. And I expect him to score a lot of points and win over. He's already got leads in all of the battleground states, but they're not commanding leads. I believe they will move to commanding leads after Thursday.
All right, so Trump was at this rally in Pennsylvania over the weekend. I want to play you he left it up to the audience to decide which Donald Trump, if you will, should show up. Let's take a look at that clip, and I want you to react to what you think.
He's sleeping now because they want to get him good and strong. So a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass, and they want to strengthen him up. So he comes out. He'll come out. I say he'll come out all jacked up, right? All jacked up.
So Trump earlier in the rally starts talking about whether or not he should come out and go after him, or he should be all about issues. But then he does that. And the thing that's so funny is I think a lot of folks on our side are talking about prescription drugs or whatever. I just think he's going to rest up a ton. I mean, he's at Camp David for 7 days and probably have a bunch of Red Bulls right before he goes on. I mean, is there any doubt in your mind which Joe Biden shows up?
No. Listen, I think Joe Biden will show up and do 2 things. Number 1, he will call Donald Trump a convicted felon as many times as he possibly can. Number 2, he's going to try to raise abortion as an issue as many times as he can. Why? Because those are the only 2 issues he has. Literally, there's nothing else. He cannot defend his own record. He certainly cannot defend his record on the economy nor on the border, which are far and away the two most important issues on voters' minds. And again, not my opinion, that is per any survey out there, far and away the top two issues. So instead, he will try to disparage the president, and he will try to fearmonger over abortion. Now, why are both of those ineffective ultimately? Number one, because on the conviction of Trump, and we know this from post-conviction polling, the American people understand that this verdict was a sham, that this was a political persecution, not a legitimate prosecution of an ex-president. And they overwhelmingly can see through what Alvin Bragg did in New York. And on abortion, while it is an important issue, to be sure, President Trump has taken, I think, a very sensible stance, which is that, yes, Roe was bad law, it was bad precedent, but this issue belongs in the states where it currently is. And so given that, I believe he's taken much of the power out of that as a federal issue and certainly as a presidential issue. So that leaves us then, back to what really matters to people, what matters at the kitchen table, what matters for street safety, for economic prosperity, for national security. It's the border and inflation. And once we get back to those two I's, I believe Donald Trump has an incredibly compelling case to make that things on both of those scores were massively better for the masses of Americans during his term in the presidency, and that they have deteriorated significantly under Joe Biden. So, Biden has, I will say this, and I never feel sorry for Joe Biden, that's for sure, because I think he's done his best to wreck this country. But he has an unenviable position in that he is trying to defend a record that cannot be defended. I mean, it just can't by any objective measure. So again, he'll try instead disparagement and he'll try fear mongering, but ultimately it won't work because where the rubber meets the road, the kitchen table tangible issues is where he fails and where the American people have a real nostalgia now. Even people who don't love Donald Trump, even people who wouldn't call themselves MAGA, they have a real nostalgia for the Donald Trump period of controlled borders and strong income growth with low inflation.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not even a personality thing. It's just a reality. I like safer communities in a safer country, and I like more prosperity. This is, for most people, they're like, take the personality out of it. I just like that better, right? The product is better. If you're comparing the two products, if you will, which are candidates. I mean, I've always said politics is marketing. Sell me your thing. And Donald Trump is easier to sell right now. There was a story the Daily Caller did over the weekend that I was quoted, and I want to get you to react to me. Tell me this is what I said. I think our side has to make sure that we keep the bar off the floor, because right now merely showing up is a win for Biden. This is a guy who's been in politics for 50 years, exactly what you said. And we need to remind everyone, including journalists, that he prides himself on being a strong debater. And I actually think that just like State of the Union, they will do what's necessary to get him ready and rested. We've got to start making sure that people understand that he's spending 7 days at Camp David doing nothing but getting ready. I mean, this is not, it's like he's at a spa and he's going to come out ready. And I don't think anybody should be surprised when he comes out and says, "Hey, folks, it's me, Joe. I'm jacked up, ready to go." I mean, I expect that to happen just like State of the Union. And unfortunately, if we don't raise the bar a little, maybe a little too late now, that he's going to get a win just for that.
Yeah. Well, listen, it is possible, but let's also remember that it's, and I know I just told you how important, and I believe that, and consequential Thursday night is. But we do also have to remember that the American people have now seen him for 3+ years in moments that were not carefully planned, that were not carefully orchestrated. And they have seen how impaired he clearly is. And I think this is important, by the way. And I actually wrote my own op-ed in the Daily Caller, which you just mentioned, the Daily Caller. I wrote my own op-ed about strategy going into this debate for Donald Trump. And my suggestion to President Trump is that he absolutely has to bring up the cognitive impairment of Joe Biden. But I also suggest that he do so with a dose of empathy. And what I mean by that is tell Joe Biden to his face, say, it is not your fault, this cognitive impairment. It is not. And millions of Americans deal with this with their parents and their grandparents. However, you are in no state to be the president of the United States. I really believe that he does need to make that case directly to Biden in front of the American people. And people who have been paying attention clearly know that, because no matter which Joe Biden shows up on Thursday night, we have seen a very impaired Joe Biden many, many times over the last 3+ years. And Americans, at least ones who have been paying even just a modest amount of attention, are at least aware of that. And by the way, when I say polling shows this, so for example, in the swing state of Arizona, my advocacy organization, League of American Workers, we just polled Arizona. Only 36% of Arizonans believe that he will be cognitively able to complete a second term. Only 36%. And among even Democrats, almost 1/5 of Democrats, 17% of Democrats tell us that they do not believe he can complete his second term. Now, those Democrats might be okay with Kamala Harris as president of the United States, but I think if we make that case to people beyond hardcore Democrats, they would not be okay with the idea of Kamala Harris. So my point is, it's an issue that polling backs this as being a salient issue. It's not a mean-spirited attack, particularly if it's delivered with the right sort of disclaimers around it. That many things are Joe Biden's fault. Okay, many things are. The open border is 100% Joe Biden's fault. His cognitive impairment is not his fault, but it still does not mean that he should be the commander-in-chief of the greatest nation in the history of the world.
All right, I don't want to dwell on this because I want to get to the moderators and the rules in a second. But just real quick, I mean, you wrote this in the Daily Caller. Do you think that, let's put it this way. What do you think the odds are that Donald Trump takes your advice on something like this?
I don't know. I can't put odds on it. I would say 30%. I don't think
dude, we are in sync this morning because that was exactly the number I had. Okay. I wanted to know, God bless you, because I was like, I wonder if Cortes is going to inflate his own number and be like, he's going to have 70%. That was, no. I'm with you. I thought in my head, 30% is exactly it.
Yeah. I think it's possible. It's not a 10%. It's not a 70%.
Right. No. All right, so let's move on. I just loved it. I think somehow the stars have aligned today between that Snopes story and you being the hero there. This was meant to be for us to rendezvous today. Let's move on to the moderators and the rules at your former employer, CNN. I saw this clip and I'm like, this is how I'm definitely going to address it. Caroline Leavitt, the national press secretary for President Trump, was on fired MSNBC host Casey Hunt's poorly rated show. And I want to play the exchange because it's so, now you don't have to wonder why Casey was fired from MSNBC, but watch this clip and I'll just get your reaction to it first and foremost. Take a look.
Sure.
It does seem as though many Republicans have set the bar very low in terms of arguing that Joe Biden is basically senile. Now you have people like Doug Burgum coming out and saying, well, President Biden's very accomplished, trying to set expectations in a different place. What do you expect from Joe Biden?
Well, first of all, it would take someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently frequently likened President Trump to Adolf Hitler.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop this interview if you continue to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay.
Now,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to come back out to the panel. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back at any point. She is welcome to come back and speak about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will have equal time to Joe Biden when they both join us now later this week in Atlanta for this debate. Our thanks to Caroline.
Oh, Steve Cortes. You are not allowed to discuss. This goes to your story, doesn't it? You are not allowed to express any kind of dissent on CNN, are you?
Right. Well, and here's the thing, Sean. It is directly relevant because CNN is part of the story. Okay. When CNN is hosting the debate, this is not extraneous. Caroline Leavitt, who's a good friend of mine and I think doing an excellent job, Caroline was not somehow dragging in CNN so that she could make, an extraneous ad hominem attack against the CNN anchors. No, CNN is hosting the debate. Jake Tapper himself has compared Donald Trump in the past to Hitler. And that is a clearly relevant topic, worthy of discussion as we head into the debate. And by the way, one of the reasons it's worthy of discussion is because hopefully the more that their bias is discussed before the debate, hopefully, the tighter the parameters will be around them. In other words, that they will feel at least some pressure to try to act like reasonable moderators rather than brazen partisans during the debate. That may be asking too much, but the point is it's important to at least frame it properly. So it's outrageous that CNN would pretend somehow that they are not central to the story when they are hosting the debate themselves. I guess I would also say to CNN, I mean, man up. You know, if you want to host a debate like this and you can't take it, you can't take the heat that's going to come that is commensurate with hosting a debate in a race that is going to be this tight in America in a very polarized partisan atmosphere, you really can't handle somebody coming onto your airwaves and criticizing you and criticizing your anchors, and you're going to cut their mic and take them off the screen. I mean, man up, CNN, okay? This is big boy politics. And if you want to play at this level, and if you want to have the honor and the privilege of hosting this debate, then you better have thicker skin than this and be willing to accept criticism, including on your own airwaves.
I just want to go back to what Caroline Leavitt said, though. She said it takes a simple Google search to see, right? She didn't attack Jake Tapper. She didn't say a word about Jake Tapper. All she said was it takes a simple 5-minute Google search, right? And Casey Hunt wigs out, don't you dare Google Jake Tapper, because if you Google him, you might possibly know that he worked for Handgun Control. You might possibly know that he worked for Chelsea Clinton's mother-in-law when she was a Democratic member of Congress from Pennsylvania. Don't you dare Google it. That's what I found shocking, Steve Cortes, that suddenly do not mention Google. Don't talk about it. She didn't attack Jake Tapper. She didn't attack CNN. She said a mere Google search will reveal Donald Trump and Jake Tapper's history. That's it. Full stop. That's not an attack. And all these leftists on CNN, I mean, online are saying Casey Hunt shut her down. I'm like, she didn't shut her down. Exactly what you said. She's afraid of any criticism or critique. But Caroline Leavitt did not attack CNN. She did not attack Jake Tapper. She merely asked people to Google it.
Yeah, no, exactly. But hey, the search for facts, the search for truth is suddenly not quote journalism. And I say quotes because of course that is the definition of journalism, but not the CNN variety. You know, it just as an addendum to that, just by chance, I was reading this morning about former CNN broadcaster John Avlon, who's now running for Congress as a Democrat out on Long Island, and his entire platform, literally his entire platform, is anti-MAGA. I mean, that is all he talks about, is he's running against MAGA Republicans. Now, he has every right to do that, but I would invite the audience to think about that, right? Think about the fact that he went, without any break at all, literally one day CNN broadcaster, next day anti-MAGA congressional candidate for the Democrat Party on Long Island in New York. That is representative, okay? It's not an outlier. That is representative. It unfortunately exemplifies what CNN and the rest of the corporate media is all about. That's the other thing, too. I don't want to just pick on CNN, okay? They might be the worst example out there, or the second worst, I guess, next to MSNBC. But remember that this is pervasive. It's pervasive, unfortunately, in many local newsrooms. It's pervasive in the online world, particularly where big tech censors aggressively, for instance, at the Google properties YouTube, as well as at the Meta property Facebook. So remember, this is what we're up against. Now, again, I think we're going to prevail largely because of the complete ineptitude of Biden and his governance and his absolute failure in governance. I think we're going to prevail. But remember, we've got a tall task ahead of us because of these obstacles and challenges.
Right. All right, Steve, always appreciate your insight. Again, congrats on getting the shout out for your work, getting Snopes 7 years late to actually do their job. I appreciate you being with us. We'll check back in with you, obviously, as we get through this debate and so much more in the election season. Guys, continue to go to frontrowjoes.movie or salemnow.com to check out my new documentary, Trump's Front Row Joes. You just had a rally this weekend. If you've never been to a rally, you've never understood the supporters, you can go to salemnow.com. The cool part is if you have someone at CNN that you know, or a crazy uncle or someone who doesn't understand who makes up that MAGA movement, at salemnow.com, you can actually gift someone the documentary. Right at the top there, salemnow.com, you can go to gift and do that. Continue to subscribe at Rumble and YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, because we got a lot going on this week as we lead up to that big debate Thursday night. I think we'll be live late that night for analysis as well, so hit that notification button now. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.